Yo, what's going on YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and we are taking a look today in Southern California in the Western Conference to take a look at the Los Angeles Kings as we continue our season preview series. The Los Angeles Kings were kind of active again this summer. You know, the Los Angeles Kings are not afraid to make some moves. They made some moves in the draft. And to be honest, this is the season of the kids. Can some of the kids that they've drafted here over the past 5 or 6 seasons, can they A, make the NHL lineup and beat out some of the guys already there? And B, can they flourish? Can they play to the level that we expect them to? Because the Los Angeles Kings could have one of two seasons. It's the Jekyll and Hyde effect. They could be the team that ends up winning this Pacific Division, or they could end up surprising everybody and potentially missing the playoffs. So the Los Angeles Kings last season, the goals for and goals against, 17th in the NHL for goals for. So they could score a couple more goals, and I think that they will with some of the additions they've made, as well as some of their prospects coming in. They will get more goal-scoring production next year. Goals against, 19th in the NHL. Again, I think something that will be improved upon just by guys in their system developing. And I think that will happen for the Kings. You know, they did lose in the first round to the Edmonton Oilers. They took them to 7 games, though. You know, the Los Angeles Kings had some fight, and I think they tasted that little bit of blood, making the playoffs again. Kopitar and Doughty said last offseason, listen, we're done with this rebuild. We want to make the playoffs. We have some career left in us. We got some jet fuel here. Let's try and go on a run, and it sounded like they were destined to maybe do that. And it looks like they're going to try and be poised enough to do that again this year. So you look at some of their additions this offseason. Kevin Fiala is the biggest acquisition outside of the organization. Kevin Fiala comes in from Nashville, so now you have 2 former Nashville Predator forwards on your roster, in Victor Arvidsson and Kevin Fiala. Now, Kevin Fiala most recently played in Minnesota, but we know both those guys were in Nashville together at one point, so kind of cool to see that reunion. But really, like I said, you know, that was really the only guy that came in of any significance to the team. A lot of these guys that the Kings have are guys that are already there that just need to take the next step. So looking at the Kings guys that I expect to make the lineup and they're going to need to make an impact, Tyler Madden, Alex Turcotte, and Jarrett Anderson-Dolan up front. I think all 3 of those guys really have an outside chance, if not a very good chance, of making the roster. You know, I think there's some competition in the bottom 6 with guys like Kaliev, Kupari, Velarde, Laza, Iafallo. There's just a lot of guys down there. And the question is, can any of these younger guys crack the lineup? It's going to be tough. You know, the Kings do have a surplus of talent there. And I'm going to get to this at the end of the video, but I think there's more here to the table for the Kings, and we'll get to that. On the blue line, does Brandt Clarke make the lineup? Now, I think it's an outside chance, especially re-signing Alexander Edler, but there is a chance that maybe we do see Brandt Clarke play some games in the National Hockey League. Again, he's probably going to spend a lot of the season in Ontario with the Ontario Reign. No, not the Canadian Ontario, but you guys know the California Ontario, right? So I expect Brandt Clarke to play in the AHL next season with the Baby Kings, but he will eventually get an opportunity in LA, again, barring injuries. And I hate to say, you look at some of these guys, they're a little bit injury prone, so I do expect him to play some games in the National Hockey League next season. They also brought in Phoenix Copley, who kind of has a soft spot in my heart, as made of metal as it is. Phoenix Copley comes over from the Hershey Bears, spent a lot of time with Hershey, ended up getting traded to St. Louis in the TJ Oshie trade, ended up going back to Hershey. He ended up re-signing with the Hershey Bears, so he spent a lot of seasons there. They're going to really like him in Ontario with the Ontario Reign. I don't think he's going to be an actual goaltender in the NHL. You know, he doesn't beat Quick or Peterson, but I think he's a good 3rd or 4th goalie in the system for the Kings. Really good depth there. So that's what's going to lead me to my next point, because how much longer do you have to wait for Tyler Madden, Alex Turcotte, and Jarrett Anderson-Dolan? Because when I look at those guys, all of those guys are talented, and, well, the perception from around the league is they should make the lineup. And when I look at the Los Angeles Kings forward group right now, just looking at their top six, Adrian Kempe, Kopitar, and Fiala is the first line. Trevor Moore, Philip Deneau, and Victor Arvidsson is their second line. And then their bottom six, there's guys that could probably use more minutes. Alex Iafallo, Blake Lazar, Arthur Kaliev, Gabe Vilardi, Quentin Byfield, and Rasmus Kupari. Again, Byfield and Vilardi on the fourth line, is that a good fit for them? So, and that's not even mentioning some of the guys that I think could make the lineup in training camp, right? Tyler Madden, Turcotte, and Anderson Dolan. So with that said, are the LA Kings going to brew up a trade here? Now again, we've talked about this before. The rumors that Jacob Chychrun could end up going to the Los Angeles Kings. I think it makes sense. You look at the Los Angeles Kings, and it's not that they need a defenseman there. It's more that they have the luxury of making a trade like that. You're kind of not utilizing all your assets here. And when you look at that group, right, you've got Matt Roy, Jordan Spence, and Sean Durzi. Those are your right shot defensemen. Bjornfot, Movere, Edler, and Mikey Anderson, right? That's your left shot. So, again, when you look at bringing in Chychrun, well, where does Chychrun fit? They have him as a left or a right shot defenseman. He can play both sides. So, let's just say, hypothetically, he plays his position on the left side. It would be Mikey Anderson, Drew Doughty, and then instead of Tobias Bjornfot, you end up putting, with Matt Roy, you end up putting Jacob Chychrun as your second pair. That's a really good second pair. But here's the problem. What's the cost? Because if you're going to pay, let's say they really like Vilardi. So you pay Vilardi, Turcotte, and a first-round pick. Let's just say that's the price. It's some kind of form of that. If that's the price, you're getting a second-pairing defenseman for that? Does that really make sense? Again, that's probably why the Kings haven't made that trade. Despite it making sense in terms of value, that's something you would pay for a top pairing defenseman, right? So I think they like Mikey Anderson with Drew Doughty. So why are you going to break that up to bring in Chychrun? Again, so that's why I understand the needs there, but it's going to come at a price. And when you have Brant Clark coming up, who's probably going to end up playing on the second pair where Matt Roy is at some point, again, it's one of those things. So I'd like to know what you guys think of that. What would you be willing to trade for Jacob Chychrun in terms of assets, right? Is it a Tobias Bjornfot? Is it even a Mikey Anderson, as crazy as that sounds? Is it Turcotte, Vilardi, Kaliev? What is the price for him? And to be honest, I don't think there's a question that the Kings make the playoffs. I think the Kings are, right now, I have them as the second best team in the Pacific Division. I think they make the playoffs, and I think their Achilles heel will be the Oilers this season. The Oilers look really solid. They've got the two-headed monster returning in Draisaitl and McDavid, and with better goaltending this year. So I think it's going to be tough for the Kings, and kind of poetic with how they lost to them last year in the playoffs. I just think they're the better team right now. But if the Kings can figure out some of these assets and maybe work with them and trade some of them to acquire guys that can help them right now, the Kings might be ready to go next year and be a legit contender. But let me know what you guys think down below of the Los Angeles Kings. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.